Hi friends, I am Rohan Roy. Welcome to our channel. Today we are going to talk about one of the most important concepts in JavaScript programming, functions. So without any delay, let's get to it. A function in general, not just in JavaScript, is a block of code that is designed to do a specific task for us. To perform this task, it may need some inputs that we call parameters, and it may return an output to us if that's needed. This function can be executed by calling its name along with some arguments if they are required. Functions are a way to encapsulate a set of instructions and execute them whenever we need. They allow us to write reusable code that can easily be invoked multiple times, saving us both time and effort. Let's take a look at some of the advantages of using functions in JavaScript. Abstraction. Functions allow us to hide complex functionality into a single simple to use operation. Let's look at an example where we have a function that calculates interest and total amount accumulated based on a principal amount. To calculate this, it will need type of interest, principal amount, rate of interest, and number of times interest applies per time unit, which is mostly per annum. So basically hiding the actual complexity and providing a clean interface which accepts few inputs and provides output. Modularity. Functions allow us to organize our code into smaller, manageable chunks that is easier to debug and maintain. Take the example of interest calculation. If we zoom into the function, based on the type of interest, we will call either simple interest or compound interest function. If we zoom into the simple interest function, it's calling shared utility functions to perform a number of operations. Same if we zoom out and zoom into compound interest, where we will call several utility functions several times. One of them will give us interest accumulated and the total amount. So breaking a complex problem into sub-problems and then putting it back together. Reusability. Functions can be reused throughout our code, reducing the amount of repetitive code that we have to write. Let's look at the same interest calculation example again. Here we can check out the shared utility functions, that is add, subtract, multiply, divide, and power or exponent. It's being used both in simple interest and compound interest to perform all its base operations. So here the utility functions are being called in the two algorithm functions, and the algorithm functions are being called in the main function, which returns a result. Let's take a look at how to declare a function in JavaScript. Functions are declared using function keyword followed by a name and a set of parameters that are used as inputs. To invoke a function, we simply call its name followed by parentheses. Functions can give output values using return keyword, which can then be used in other parts of our code. The difference between parameters and arguments in functions. Let's start with parameters. A parameter is a placeholder for an argument that is passed to a function. It's declared in the function definition and is used as input inside that function. An argument, on the other hand, is a real value that is passed to a function when it is called. A function can have multiple parameters, and each parameter must have a corresponding argument when that function is called. Let's talk about required parameters. A required parameter is a parameter that must be passed to a function when it is called. Otherwise, it may return you an unexpected output or throw an error. Next, let's talk about default parameters. A default parameter is a parameter that has a default value if no argument is passed to it. A REST parameter allows a function to accept any number of arguments as an array. This can be useful in scenarios where your function must be capable of accepting variable number of arguments. Also make sure that the REST parameter is set as last, otherwise it will throw syntax error. Destructured parameters are a way for a function to extract data from arrays and objects and pass them as separate variables to the function. Let's start with local variables. A local variable is a variable that is declared inside a function and can only be accessed from within that function. This variable isn't accessible from outside of this function. On the other hand, an outer variable is a variable that is declared outside of a function and can be accessible by any function within the same scope. It's important to note that when a local variable has the same name as an outer variable, then the local variable takes precedence. This is because the local variable is set to shadow the outer variable within the function. We are going to build a simple JavaScript application that calculates interest on a given principal amount. We will be using the Node.js environment and the Express framework to serve our application. So first we will create some server code that serves some static HTML, CSS and JavaScript files to the client browser. Next we will create the layout of the application using HTML and CSS. Give it a nice UI that takes all the necessary inputs and provide us with result. We also need to fetch all the input elements, select and the action buttons. Next we will code all the necessary shared utility functions that will be used for operations in the interest calculation algorithms. These will be is-valid number, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division and power or exponent. These will handle all our base operations, so we don't have to repeat our code. We will also create the functions to calculate simple interest, compound interest and also calculate interest function that consumes these two functions. The calculate interest function will then be called when user clicks on the calculate button. We will quickly run the application and test whether everything is working fine or not. Also, I will put the link to the repository down in the description. You guys can check it out. To summarize, we discussed what functions are and why we use them, advantages of functions, how to declare a function, parameters versus arguments, different types of parameters, local variable, outer variable and scope chain, and we created a simple web app in which we leverage the functions to implement the core functionality. If you have any questions or concerns, please put it in the comments and I will address them. You can check out this playlist if you are interested in JavaScript related topics. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video and want to stay up to date. I will see you in the next one. Have a nice day. Namaskar.